September 11th of 1992, Iniki struck the island of Kauai. And as a Category 4 strength hurricane, it packed sustained winds of 145 miles per hour or 233 kilometers per hour, but gusts that reached a staggering 225 miles per hour or 362 kilometers per hour. Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, now in its second year from the Weather Network in Canada. In Hawaiian, Iniki means strong and piercing wind, and this was definitely the case on this day in weather history. Hawaii, 50th state in the Union and the only one outside of North America. Famed author Mark Twain once said of Hawaii that it is the loveliest fleet of islands that lies in any ocean. Hawaii's tourism is driven by eternally active volcanoes and the site of the first ever attack on U.S. soil when Pearl Harbor was bombed by Japan in World War II. But this island state is so isolated in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, it means it's a sitting duck for tropical storms. Today, we look back to the year 1992, when a Category 4 hurricane steamrolled over this archipelago on September 11th. Iniki formed on September 5th and was one of 11 Central Pacific tropical cyclones during that season. It strengthened into a proper tropical storm on September 8th, and then the next day it strengthened again, but this time into a hurricane. As a testament to how powerful the winds were, the anemometer that recorded that gust was found later blown into a nearby forest during the cleanup. In another wild sidebar story, the film Jurassic Park, at that time, was being filmed in Hawaii. The cast and crew took shelter in a hotel, while the sets used for what would become, thankfully, deleted scenes was destroyed. But shots of Hurricane Iniki did make the final cut of this major motion picture. Welcome to year 2 of this podcast. Right now, you're listening to the full version of today's story on your favorite podcast provider. But there's also the daily podcast video short. They're shot right here in my podcast recording studio, so you get that perspective. But oftentimes, they will include visuals from that day's event, from when it happened, in weather history. So after listening to the full story, go check out the podcast video short on television or online anytime at theweathernetwork.com/weather history. Now in total, only 6 deaths were reported, and that was despite the fact that the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, the CPHC, failed to issue tropical cyclone watches and warnings 24 hours in advance. The greatest damage was on Kauai, where the hurricane destroyed more than 1,400 houses, while also severely damaging more than 5,000 others. Though not directly in the path of the eye, Oahu experienced moderate damage from wind as well as storm surge. Immediately after the storm, having had no real warning or time to prepare, many were relieved that they at all survived the worst of a Category 4 hurricane. You see, their complacency turned to apprehensiveness due to the lack of information. And with no warning, and with every radio station off the air, there was no news available for several days. As a result, amateur radio proved to be extremely helpful during the 3 weeks after the storm. And then the strength of the human spirit jumped into action. Volunteers started coming from the neighboring islands and from other reaches from around the Pacific to assist in the recovery. Iniki caused around $3.1 billion in damage. Now that is in 1992 USD, making it the costliest natural disaster on record in the state, and the second costliest Pacific hurricane on record. It was the first hurricane to hit the state since Hurricane Iwa in the 1982 season, and the first major hurricane since Hurricane Dot in 1959. The name Iniki was retired because of the damage it caused, and the letter I was replaced with Iolana in the Central North Pacific Tropical Storm List. But it breached the shores of Hawaii on September 11th, 1992, this day in weather history. Before I get into tomorrow's episode, today is a day that we must always remember that we are very vulnerable to our world changing on a dime and flipping itself upside down. Not only have we persevered through a full global pandemic, but we look back to September 11th as the day when most lives in North America were changed because of the terror attacks on New York with the World Trade Center towers, the attack on the Pentagon, and Flight 93 that was downed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. September 11th should always be remembered. Tomorrow is September 12th, and this day gets the gold, literally floating around in the ocean. Yep, 30,000 pounds of it. You heard me right, 14,000 kilograms of gold that sunk to the ocean floor after the ship carrying it sank in a hurricane. But wait till you hear how this started a global economic domino effect on this day in weather history with me, your host, Chris May.